On Two Against Nature, Steely Dan's brilliant new Giant Records release, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker returned to the studio for the first time since 1979's multi-platinum album Gaucho, with a collection of new originals and an all-star cast of supporting players. The result? A quintessential musical blend that consolidates Steely Dan's reputation as one of the most innovative and original songwriting and producing teams of all time. Hello, and welcome to Words and Music, featuring an exclusive interview with Donald Fagen and Walter Becker of Steely Dan, and tracks from their new Giant Records release, Two Against Nature. With their trademark synthesis of rock, jazz, and musical elements wholly their own, Two Against Nature continues a tradition that began with such landmark hits as Do It Again and Ricky Don't Lose That Number, and continued through Peg, Hey 19, and many more. Now, after 20 years, Steely Dan picks up where they left off, with Two Against Nature, which includes such standout tracks as Gaslighting Abbie, Cousin Dupree, and What a Shame About Me. It's most definitely been worth the wait.
Bad news breaking, 18A, Mrs. Kitty turned inside out, she say. Spider Queen Demon, that whole crew, crossed the lodge with the way going chapter. All the nice people, goodly souls, quaking in their respective hidey holes. Everyone's wasted in this gruesome dream. Not the one and then left to hear you scream. Two against nature, don't you know? You're gonna regret the shape of things to go. Two against nature, make them grow. You're gonna break the shape of things unknown. Things unknown.
We had been talking about the idea of doing this for a while. We had written songs together a couple of different times since Gaucho. There was a time in the middle 80s when we got together and wrote some tunes. And then we worked on at least one tune for Donald's record. So we had in the back of our minds the idea that we had some songs and some ideas for a new album. And I guess after the last tour in '96, we decided, well, let's go and do it if we're going to do it. And that's when we started.
I think there was a couple songs that may date back, into the 80s?
Yeah, definitely into the middle 80s.
At least the germinal ideas of them, but, those were probably, as I remember, rewritten extensively. And most of the songs were written in the 90s.
It's always been our habit in writing to look at pieces that we've had laying around for years, or to rewrite songs that we've perhaps finished and decided weren't that good, but all of the lyrics and all of the finished song structures and melodies and so on are really new.
I think when we get together, we just end up with a certain style, which hopefully has evolved over the years. I don't think we were really remembering what we used to do in the 70s or 80s, really. It was just a matter of collecting some fragments that we had worked on either alone or together, and seeing if we could come up with some interesting music that was interesting enough so that we would actually want to make records out of the material.
I think we actually started recording in November of '97.
I mean, there was times in between when we, went back to write some more or took off, but...
yeah, we took that weekend.
Yeah, that weekend.
We
went down to Tijuana.
It was a long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I was grinding through my day gig, stacking cutouts at the Strand, when in walks Franny from NYU. We were quiet and hiding back then. We talked about our films and shows and CDs. Don't know what else. She said, yeah, Hollywood's been good to me, but tell me, how about yourself? I'm still working She's out of the rehab, living one day at a time, sneaking up on the new century. What a shame about me. What a shame about me. I'm thinking of a Major Jane Street sunrise. And the goddess on the fire escape was you.
Yeah, this material is all pretty new. As I say, some of the things may be based on ideas from many years ago that we had on tape, which is usually a cassette in a boombox, old work tapes that we sort of collate once in a while. It's a renewable process because obviously some things don't work out the way you want, so you end up with these fragments which then can be later used for something else if they come along. For instance, if you're writing a song and a chord progression will lead to a spot where you say, this sounds familiar, and it'll turn out to be similar to a chord progression from some fragment that we never used, and we say, this effect might sound good here, so we'll use that, we'll just pick those things out. You end up sewing everything together in a way, and I think most things are so much more random than they seem, and then when you put them together, hopefully they won't seem random.
Yeah, it's true. It's surprising when you're writing stuff how many different ways a thing could work and still sound right. A lot of times we'll sit there and we're trying to figure out which is best. They all sound pretty good.
What it is you'll be writing something and realize the section you're about to write you've already written for a song that never matured. Right. For instance, there's one song, West of Hollywood, has a chorus which we started playing something and it reminded us of a chorus of a sort of reggae song we wrote in the 80s, and so we dug it up and we adapted it, but we had to change a few things, but essentially we were able to use that idea 15 years later.
We're very, very economical.
Yeah.
We like to use all little bit scraps of things that we find.
Brother in tears, look at this chain of sorrows, stretching all the way from here and now to hell and gone. I was Kid Clean, she was Andy Siegler, just a thrill away from punching through to the cosmic ground. It started out good, but then it got much better, making up the rules as we went along. But with a business like this, there's an early downside. I'm way deep into nothing special, riding the crest of a wave breaking just west of Hollywood. Swinging so hard, we burned right through the summer, till the axis of pain pleasure shares the arc of desire. From the Rue des Affaires to the streets of Culver City, places and events slip below the horizon line. But now at this time, into a prehistoric, the truth compels us to bring a certain end. I mean, if you will, like the Warren Kruger. I'm way deep into nothing special, riding the crest of a wave breaking just west of Hollywood.
West of Hollywood, we were trying to write a love story, really, but reducing it to the main points, almost telling it from a theoretical framework, like the outline someone would make for a screenplay or something.
Yeah, and I think in a way it was, as far as the lyrics went, it was a stylistic exercise trying to come up with a narrative mode that was different than what we usually do or what people usually do in songs.
She reached out for my hand while I watched myself emerge and cry. And I almost got there. I almost got there. I almost got there. Almost got there. Look in my eyes. Don't you see the car is frozen? You can't ask me to access the dreams I don't have now. Sadly for us, a little talk is over. So together we'll endure the tyranny of the disallowed. Don't you love Port Blanc? The lootery is over. When the girls get easy and the crowds are gone. Weekend of bliss and the rainy season. I'm way deep into nothing special, riding the crest of a way-breaking just west of Hollywood. I'm way deep into nothing special.
Although it is also, it occurs to me now, it was sort of like when someone's trying to tell you something about some extreme experience, being carried away, either a love affair or whatever, where there seems to be no language to communicate it to someone else. So we're trying to think, what language would you use?
Right. And the other thing is that you can imagine some sort of transforming experience that leaves you off in a place where you're no longer really able to offer a coherent account of how you got there, and all you can sort of do is allude to various stations along the way that you stopped at, and it doesn't really make sense as an explanation.
It's, a really incoherent person trying to tell a really serious story.
Right. And, in sort of typical postmodern fashion, the narrative mode or voice sort of overwhelmed the actual narration a little bit. So it becomes
the style almost takes over.
Right. Most of the playing that's done on the record is done by guys that are right here in New York. So we sort of knew where we were going to start and figured we'd see, as has always been the case in the past, you see what you get. And if you try to cut a track with a particular band and it's not successful, often that gives you some idea of either how the concept of the track or the arrangement has to change to make it successful, or how the instrumentation or the actual personnel might change.
Or in some cases we used a drum track or a bass track and did the rest of the playing ourselves on guitar and keyboards, because it just demanded a certain feel that may have been there in the drum track but not in the other parts. On West of Hollywood, we had a solo section that we wanted Chris Potter to play on saxophone, but that turned out to be a guitar solo. But during the course of the day when he came in, he said, "Let me take a shot at the tag," which he had heard, and he tried it, and then I think he said, "Let me take this home for a couple days and look at it," because it was quite complex. And then he came in like a couple days later and just did a couple takes. And we didn't actually plan on having a saxophone solo there. I think we didn't know what was going to go there. We had the chord progression. At one point, it was just going to be something very simple, something almost sort of Baroque sounding at one point. But he played it so well that we realized that we should keep it.
It was absolutely
completely improvisation. Yeah.
We'll be back with Steely Dan and Two Against Nature after this.
Some of the tracks were live, and some were, I guess they're sort of cyber live. In some cases, we used part of a drum track, and if we needed a loop section or something, we do that. But essentially, it was played with a band, just like the old days.
Back in the 70s, we were basically working with 24-track machines, and there was a space limitation for layering tracks that doesn't exist anymore. So we probably ended up with more layers of interwoven separate tracks, and I think also just the way we ended up doing overdubs on some of these tunes and defining the tunes with sort of fragmentary parts and then adding more parts to them. It means there's more tracks of guitars.
I think Walter is more confident about soloing this time around, so that he does really all the guitar solos, and it makes it stylistically more unified too, because, you know, rather than having 2 or 3 guitar players being showcased, it's essentially just Walter playing.
I only have one chop.
But it's that one chop is in very good condition.
Horn charts were written after most of the stuff was done on the tracks.
I used to do it in the 70s, usually. I used to do it, or Walter and I used to do them, usually in conjunction with one of the musicians, somebody who would help us with some of the technical parts, but I'd just becoming a little more confident about writing the parts, and then sort of hand them off to somebody to copy. And then I got a lot of help this time from a guy named Michael Linhart, who's a trumpet player who played trumpet on the dates and also helped with the arrangements. And if we feel it needs some support from horns or some sparkle, we'll write a horn chart for it. Minimal as they may be. It's usually something we do last. Jack of Speed is really just about when one member of a couple starts to lose it in some way. I guess, the most obvious question is like, was you're talking about actual speed, like the drug speed or something. It's really not that. It has to do with sort of kind of manic stages people get into for one reason or another. And it's a cautionary song. He's out there, he's living too large.
I think for the most part, these are not particular people that we know. Rather than that, they're either sort of exaggerations of our own experiences or products of our own imaginations or fantasies or
based on people we know maybe, but no one specific. Maybe combinations of things you hear or just it's trying to isolate some impulse that someone our age might have, not necessarily us, but someone.
One plus summer you come to me, ripe and ready, and bad through and through. With that deep mystical soul synergy pumping steady between me and you. Loving all the beautiful work we've done, carry me up, and it's barely July. If we keep on bopping until Labor Day, little Miss Abbie, bye-bye. What will it be? Some soothing herb tea might be just the thing. Let's say we spike it with diluting, or else maybe tonight a hand of solitaire. Flame is the game we call gaslighting. Abbie. It's a luscious invention for three. One summer by the sea. The long weekend that's coming up fast. Let's get busy. Just too much to do. That black mini looks just like the one she's been missing. Good on you. There's a few items we need in town. Not everywhere. There's no time to wait. Such as fresh cable and 15-watt bulbs. Couple dozen. Big old place. Let's keep it light. We'll do a fright night with blood and everything. Some funky laughter from the kitchen. And then nice relaxing and a solid game. Flame is the game. The game we call Gaslighting Abbie. It's a luscious invention for three. One summer by the sea. You can choose the music. I'll set up my gear. Later on we'll chill and watch the fireworks from here.
Gaslighting, actually, its origin was from the classic film Gaslight. And what to gaslight is what Charles Boyer did to, who was it, Ingrid Bergman or something?
Yeah.
He tried to convince her that she was insane by moving things around in the house and
Constantly turning the lights lower and lower,
it's
you
about
know.
a guy who, along with his secret lover, is essentially trying to get rid of his wife or drive her insane. They
right,
steal her
yes,
clothes
that's
and they get 15-watt light bulbs and put them in place of the usual light bulbs so it looks really dark in the house. It's a very menacing.
Yeah, it was sort of meant to be harmonically the effect of a knife up between the ribs there.
It's sort of like the oral equivalent of an Alfred Hitchcock movie.
How can you knock this mighty spike lock? Check out the work itself. A mix of elegance and function. That's right. A tweak or two and then she's out of here. Flame is the game. The game we call Gaslighting Abbie. It's a luscious invention for three. And summer by the sea. Flame is the game. The game we call Gaslighting Abbie. It's a luscious invention for three. One summer by the sea.
We have a very antique idea of what modernity is, I guess.
When we started, modern was Boyd Rayburn and his orchestra. Really, still seemed pretty modern to us. So
It seems to us that since we were fortunate enough to have a going career for as many years as we did in the 70s, making records and still today touring and doing other stuff, that there is an audience for what we like and what we've been doing right along. And so we sort of assume that there is without actually checking to see how it might fit in with the context of things that other people are doing. Because the truth is, even back in 1971, what we were doing didn't really relate that strongly to what other people were doing. It seems to be the case that a lot of the pop music that you hear now, there would be no point in spending more than a certain time making a record that's not going to be fashionable. Basically, people are creating something that's going to fit the mood of the moment or the style of the moment, and that may be perhaps more style than substance.
also people tend to think in genres now. I notice younger musicians will say, well, it's a little like this and a little like that with some trip hop mixed in, but even though it does have certain elements from jazz and so on, we don't really think of it as a genre of any kind. Really, it's just what we like,
Basically, we're trying to make harmonically interesting music. And
more or less unknown.
yeah, that in and of itself puts us way out in left field.
She's lost, she's late, zooming on a couch somewhere. Or hi, or home, I'm not supposed to call her there. I wait, I smoke, I stare into my coke. It's happening again. I tell myself that it's over and done. Amen. Her skin like milk, it's like she's never seen the sun. Some hearts to crunch is more like her idea of fun. I know she's ill, I'm cruising for a spill, I'm hanging just the same. I need to be in the heat of a cold wine flame. Another negative girl at the edge of the frame, deliciously toxic, the original classic theme, more of the same.
You've been listening to Words and Music, featuring an exclusive interview with Donald Fagen and Walter Becker of Steely Dan, and tracks from their long-awaited new Giant Records release, Two Against Nature. Words and Music was written and produced by Davin C. The engineer was Keith Blake. This program is a copyrighted feature, and no portion may be reproduced without written permission from Giant Records. Thanks for listening.